Midway through the lunar cycle that was started by the Aries eclipse that was very potently felt by many of us, 2 weeks later, and near the end of Mercury retrograde, we are now having a full moon in the fixed water sign of Scorpio. And during this time of this lunar illumination, really shining a spotlight mainly on aspects of our shadow, hidden aspects of ourselves, and really places that might feel a bit uncomfy as we step into a new chapter of our lives and work to evolve in many ways. They're coming to light, and it might be a little uncomfy, especially with Mercury retrograde happening, and as it's coming to a close, it being a bit easier for us to articulate how we feel and really put words to the experiences that we've been having and noticing the pattern of events that have been tied to this retrograde and eclipse season. It's all definitely being ushered and really ignited through this Scorpio full moon. Hello friends, it's your girl Alina, and in this video we will dive into the top things that you need to know all about this Scorpio full moon, and I will be diving into your unique horoscope based off of your rising sign. So I'm really excited to dive in. If you're liking my videos, the #1 way to support my work is simply by hitting the like button, because it tells the YouTube algorithm that you enjoy content like this and it helps to spread it. Also, if you want an outline of this video and a full rundown of this Scorpio full moon, email directly to your inbox, and be sure to sign up for my astrology newsletter. So with that said, let's get started. So on April 23rd, we see that the full moon will be happening at 4 degrees in the fixed water sign of Scorpio. As many of you already know, full moons are this midway point in the lunar cycle where we see that the moon is reflecting at its fullest capacity the sun's light, making it a very bright night as well, but it in astrology is associated with there being heightened energy. The moon, just like we see that it can raise the tides, so too, especially around a full moon, can it raise our intuitive and emotional abilities and senses. And because we see that the moon directly rules over our inner world, our emotions, how we process things, and also our relationships, I'll think aspects of the divine feminine as well, fertility, infertility in terms of not just physical, but also our ability to manifest. This is one of the reasons why many people manifest in alignment with the cycles and signs that the moon is transiting. And so when we see that the moon is at its energetic peak midway through the lunar cycle, this is a time where I like to call it being almost like a cosmic spotlight, where the full moon can tend to highlight areas of our lives that are and are not working for us midway through this cycle. It can be a really great time to gain clarity on what has been working, and in a lot of ways this can be a great time to celebrate how far you've come as well. And on the other side of the coin, it can also highlight what isn't working for you in different areas and aspects of your life. And you can get even more specific by learning what house this lunation will be transiting for you, which we will be diving into. Now, when we see a full moon transiting Scorpio, with that context, it can specifically illuminate hidden aspects of ourselves, shadow sides of our psyche, maybe areas that we might have kind of like brushed under the rug or swept under the rug, or maybe pushed down within us to kind of fit in society in some ways. Scorpio full moons are also associated with heightened passion and a calling to get intimate. And intimate doesn't always necessarily mean, sexual intimacy in that way. It can as well, but it means all aspects of intimacy. Think of when you are dating somebody, or maybe you're in a friendship and you get to a point where you're finally opening up about aspects of yourself that maybe in normal day-to-day conversations, like when you're at the grocery store with your neighbor or people you have surface level connections with, you don't usually show that to them. And so with Scorpio full moons, because it's bringing our inner world to the surface in a lot of ways and heightening our intuitive and emotional senses, it specifically tends to bring up really deeper rooted aspects of ourselves. And again, namely aspects of ourselves that are unconscious. Maybe we didn't always consciously push them down, but sometimes it's like things that we aren't aware of. So think of self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is often a great example of something that we're not even fully aware of, where we kind of like sabotage ourselves to prevent us from growing in some way or getting something that we wanted, because deep down we want to stay within our comfort zone. And sometimes our comfort zone isn't even things that we actually enjoy, but it's familiar. So you see what I mean? And so as we dive into each unique horoscope, we will also talk about that, about what aspect of your life is this Scorpio full moon highlighting and putting a spotlight into unconscious aspects of yours or other people's psyche in your circles. Scorpio full moons are also a time of a lot of passion. Full moons in general are a very passionate time, a lot of high energy where we're feeling called to kind of like speak our truth in a lot of ways. When it's in the sign of Scorpio, there's a lot more passion. And again, like I said before, there's a lot more of these nudges towards intimacy, and especially with a full moon, it's almost like a lot of us might end up being kind of like at a crossroads where it's like, okay, there's aspects of myself or my community or people that I'm close to that are kind of being highlighted right now. Like I'm picking up on this aspect that was kind of unconscious before. And you have a choice to dive deeper into that, lean into that, and process it, really face it, and, acknowledge it. And then you have another aspect of it, another, side of the coin, or another approach where it can be like, oh, I did not know that, and I'm going to go in the other direction, because full moons are also a time of letting go of what no longer serve us. And so what gets illuminated right now could also lead to potential severing ties with certain things. That doesn't necessarily mean people. It could be, Scorpio is about relationships and deeper rooted long-term relationships and investments of our time, our energy, financial investments as well. But it can also look like stepping away from certain environments that are not conducive to us, or realizing that maybe we are the problem in holding back or avoiding the shadows that maybe other people are trying to connect with us on. So there's a lot going on during this full moon. And I think that in the context of the Aries eclipse that we had, this huge cosmic doorway, this opportunity, if we felt comfortable to do so, to walk through in a lot of ways, especially if you have been setting intentions and you have been like walking down a path of like, I actually want to take clear, aligned steps in alignment with my new moon intentions, especially for this eclipse season. Right now, you might notice that either within yourself, on a subconscious level, or in your environment, a potential pushback, or maybe not even a pushback, but as you are like, I'm growing, I'm doing this, you're realizing, ooh, as I'm growing, it's getting uncomfy. And that uncomfy feeling is an invitation to dive deeper into why we feel that way. And that deeper understanding is tied to the Scorpio full moon. So especially if you're already on that path, now can be a great opportunity to kind of reflect on those things. And just get clear on what you might be ready to let go of, or what you might be ready to finally acknowledge and process. Because sometimes these things that are hidden aren't things that we need to get rid of. That's a beautiful lesson of Scorpio, is that there's so many things that sometimes we might look away from and we don't want to get involved in, and we want to set a boundary with and get away from. And I feel like that's sometimes an aspect of an uninvolved Scorpio, where it's like, I'm uncomfortable, boom, get out of my life. This is a boundary. But sometimes a more evolved perspective is, oh, this is a shadow part of me, but like, this is a truth. This is still an aspect of me, or, there's a shadow aspect that's popping up in this other person, but maybe we can talk about it and get through it. It doesn't have to always be thrown away. Now, in terms of top transits happening around the time of this lunation, just a few days before, I'm literally looking at my R-Line wall calendar. So on the 23rd, we have the full moon. And then on the 19th, a few days leading up to it, we see that the sun will be entering the sign of Taurus, marking the beginning of Taurus season. So I have to say a warm happy birthday to all of my Taurus friends. And if you're interested, I started doing weekly horoscopes where I go day by day out of the week, and I talk about all the top transits, and I dive even deeper into this. So if that interests you, be sure to check that out. But when we see that the sun enters the sign of Taurus, it's kind of like, if you'd imagine Aries season is this high energy point, it's the beginning of a new astrological year. If you'd imagine that season is like a person where maybe you get a spark of an idea and you're like, oh, I gotta go do it. I wanna go research. I wanna go. And you're taking that initiative, that strong cardinal energy. When we go into Taurus season, a lot of the themes are around taking those ideas and really bringing them down from the ether and grounding them into reality through our aligned actions, our routines, and the structures that we have in our life. And so when you see that the sun enters the sign of Taurus, now can be a great time for exploring, like, oh, if there's any new things that I've kind of been implementing or trying, or any lessons that I've been learning, namely like ideas that maybe you've been processing either since the beginning of the zodiac new year, which was the beginning of spring, also the beginning of Aries season, which was about a month ago, or even back in winter if you had any resolutions, or during this previous Aries eclipse and new moon. As the sun enters Taurus over the course of this new zodiac season, there's potent energy and supportive energy around grounding any of those insights and ideas into tangible actions. And also recognizing that you're not alone. You know, Taurus is represented by 2. So learning from other people, asking questions, answering questions, those are all great things. And we have a lot to learn from Taurus people, our Taurus friends, in that way. And so I just, again, want to wish a happy birthday to all of you. And finally, on April 25th, a few days following this full moon, we will see that Mercury will finally go direct. Yay! I don't know about y'all, but, and I talked about this again in my weekly horoscope video where we dive a bit deeper into everything. I talked about how I, along with so many of my friends, have been picking up on Mercury retrograde hiccups even before retrograde started. And I think a lot of it has to do with eclipse season, and there's just been a lot of amplification of that. Mercury also has been having some really strong transits that are kind of amplifying in a lot of ways. I feel like following this full moon, we will start to, because Mercury will be going direct, you might notice that you find it a lot easier to articulate how you're feeling. You might find it a lot easier to kind of connect dots, and namely, anything that you kind of felt like you were internalizing or you felt like there was a slowdown on will start to be picking up a lot more. And considering that the full moon is this high energetic point and it's really about bringing our inner world to the surface, with Mercury slowly fading out of and ending its retrograde, you also might notice, especially around the weekend and definitely the week of this full moon, it's feeling a bit easier to express where you're at. And also you might notice that other people feel a bit more talkative in expressing themselves, and for you holding space for that. And before we continue, I want to mention that this video is sponsored by Auralign. Auralign is my company, and we not only produce and I write astrology planners and wall calendars for the year, but we are also hosting our very first annual Auralign retreat, and it is not too late to sign up and be a part of it. Thailand, where we are going to be spending a week together in, we will be enjoying workshops that I will be leading involving different modalities of astrology, so diving deeper into your practice and nerding out with fellow astrology lovers. But we will also be diving into and exploring Thai culture and the many islands around Thailand, and it's incredible. So if you literally have any questions at all, do not hesitate to hit the link in my bio or scan the QR code, and you can fill out the contact form on my page, and I'll talk to you. We can talk about any questions you might have if you're interested in coming. All right, with that said, let's dive into the all signs horoscopes. And as I always suggest, be sure to check out your rising sign. But if you're interested, like for example, I have a lot of planets all in one specific sign and certain signs. So if that shows up for you, or if you feel like, you know, you identify with maybe more so your sun or your moon, you're welcome to also check out those readings. But yeah, I'll see you there. Hello, hello, and greetings to my Aries friends. So this full moon will be transiting your 8th house of shared resources, investments, intimacy, and it also will be activating your financial access, which involves your 2nd and 8th house. So you will really be potently feeling these Scorpio themes. And I think that during this eclipse, you will more specifically be noticing hidden truths, revelations. There being spotlights on aspects of your life that maybe you weren't aware of or you weren't putting as much energy into, specifically pertaining to your long-term relationship. So think, long-term friendships, family members, maybe a partner, long-term partner, but also your long-term investments and long-term finances. So I'm not talking about like your normal income. I'm talking about maybe long-term things like, for example, taxes. I think that could be a big thing. And because there's this theme with this full moon of hidden truths coming to light, I think that will be a big theme for you. We also see that because the 8th house also involves your more intimate relationships and you being called to step into a more intimate space. I feel like with these new things that you're learning, specifically within those worlds and that aspect of long-term investments, not just financial, but also long-term relationships, your energetic investments in these relationships, you're being called to dive deeper within those spaces. And I think that you might potentially have experience a potential, almost like a crossroads of, you can either dive deeper into the relationship because there's these things that are coming up that you're learning and you're like, whoa, I did not know that. Or, you know, people are bringing it up to you that there's just something that's unconscious that's being brought to you, and you're having this opportunity to actually open up and talk about it and dive deeper into that with other people, which can fortify and even strengthen the relationship when you're vulnerable and you share that vulnerability. Or it could potentially maybe feel like, actually, this isn't even conducive to me diving deeper and I need to step away from it. But either way, it will likely involve long-term relationships. And again, with finances as well, there might be a potential situation where there's a spotlight where there's things highlighted that involve your long-term investments. And I really think it could be taxes. It is tax season. So there is that potential where you're also have this opportunity to dive deeper into your finances, maybe your financial literacy in some way, and kind of let go of your fears of that, or your aversion to that, or maybe an unconscious conditioning around your relationship with finances, maybe things that happen with your parents, or what examples you had within the space of that, like how were you educated on that. And this full moon is really spotlighting that. But I think that overall, reflecting on maybe letting go of what no longer serves you in terms of diving deeper into these aspects of your life will be very helpful around this time, especially if you want to do any sort of like releasing full moon ritual. But yeah, you're definitely being called to dive deeper into this space, and it might be a little uncomfy to like experience certain things being revealed. But yeah, that is my reading for you, my fellow Aries friends. If you made it to the end of this reading, I'd love it if you commented 3 money emojis and let me know what you thought of this reading. But I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Hello and greetings to my Taurus Sun, Moon, and Rising friends. So this Scorpio Full Moon will be transiting your 7th house of relationships, diplomacy, justice, and love. And a lot of balancing those things with the perspective of justice and equitability. And it's interesting because it's also activating your relationship access, which involves your 1st house and your 7th house. So this full moon is asking you to strike a balance between aspects of yourself and your own needs, advocating for yourself, and the needs of the collective or the needs of your relationships. And striking a balance between those things is asking you to reflect upon those things. And considering that this is a Scorpio full moon, and this is this cosmic spotlight that's shining a light on potential hidden aspects of ourselves and asking us to dive deeper, there is a high potential that you might experience new information coming about, or even within you realizing that there's aspects of your own thought process that you want to express that specifically pertains to any relationship. So think of romantic, platonic, or even workspace type of relationships. This can even involve newer relationships as well, and not like long-term ones. This can also be the type of full moon where you have friends or associates where you're slowly getting to know them. And around this full moon, there will be potential opportunities for you to dive deeper into the relationships because there are more intimate and shadow aspects of yourself or someone else that are being revealed and brought to the table. And you have this opportunity to either face those truths and face those deeper aspects of yourself or others and really dive deeper into different aspects of relationships, or you could potentially take a step back from that and maybe want to release stuff and let go of it. But ultimately, with this being really highlighting your relationship access, this will definitely likely show up in maybe if you have a partner, anything like that in the romantic sphere, most definitely. But ultimately, there's this theme around, I need to look out for you, but I also need to look out for me. And how does that show up? It seems like the real emphasis and work that will likely show up around the time of this full moon will likely involve people around you more so than yourself. But yourself obviously comes into play because you are you. Anywhere you go, that's relative to you, right? But I think that you'll definitely be noticing in others certain things pop up the most. But that concludes my reading for my Taurus friends. If you made it this far, I would love if you commented 3 heart emojis and let me know what came up for you during this reading, if you resonate with it or anything like that. But I will see you in the next one. Peace. Hello to my Gemini sun, moon, and rising friends. So this Scorpio full moon will be transiting your 6th house of health, work, daily routines, and service. And it will be activating your service access, which involves your 6th and your 12th house. So during this time, considering that this full moon is all about spotlighting aspects of ourselves midway through the lunar cycle that maybe we might be called to let go of, and specifically with it being in Scorpio, spotlighting shadow aspects of ourselves, there's a high likelihood that around this time you might experience things that really highlight for you that there are shadow aspects to your routines and your job. And I think that some of that might show up as realizing, oh, am I a workaholic, or am I throwing myself into service in a way that's kind of distracting or pulling away from my more personal time, or taking away from my ability to really sit with myself and process how I actually feel and hold space for those things. I think another thing that could be popping up for you, Gemini sun, moon, and rising friends, with this very very illuminating full moon in Scorpio, is that it might also potentially highlight some perfectionism, in that I feel like if you're setting some intentions right now and you might notice that you're kind of being a bit stagnant, or something's kind of holding you back from being in action, or maybe you're noticing some potential self-sabotage, or it's like you consciously want to do one thing but you're procrastinating on it or avoiding it, because this is transiting your 6th house of work and routine and structure, and even like perfectionism and pointing out what is and isn't in balance. I think that this full moon also might be illuminating some potential perfectionism that could be holding you back, where the full moon might illuminate aspects of yourselves or others where it's like you guys want to do something, but there's a part of you that's like, oh, but what if I do it and I'm being seen trying? Like, being afraid of being seen trying is a huge thing, and a huge reason why so many creatives and people who want to change things up a bit or enter a new chapter don't show people what they're doing, because they don't want to be seen being imperfect, right? And sometimes we don't want to put ourselves out there or dive deeper and get intimate in some ways, even intimate with ourselves, and especially in terms of our work and what we put out there and appearing balanced. It's because we want to appear balanced. We want to appear perfect. So really reflect on that if that's potentially something that's holding you back. And because this is a full moon, there's this opportunity for us to release what no longer serves us. And so consider if that has a part to play, if you've been noticing that there's an aspect, maybe a subconscious aspect of yourself that's holding yourself back in that way. You're also being called to strike this balance between your more structured routine self and what kind of grounds you and what's consistent and predictable in your life, and then the more fluid, the more 12th house aspect of things, the Piscean, more imaginative, intuitive aspect of yourself. Like, a good example of this is that you might be going through your day and you have like a set in stone sort of structure, and intuitively you're like, I'm not loving this, or intuitively you're like, ooh, doing this other thing could be really fulfilling to me. It's like I'm pouring into everyone else. You're asking to strike this balance between the more practical aspect of being in service and participating in society as like a work person, or even, supporting others in your life and bringing that structure to others. And you're asking to strike a balance between that and also pouring into yourself on a very personal level of what feeds my emotional health, what feeds my spiritual health, what feeds what brings energy to me, and striking a balance between those things. And there's really going to be this emphasis around your work, your routines, what keeps you balanced, the more grounded aspects of yourself, and whether or not you're kind of holding on to those familiar things at the detriment of potentially kind of evolving and being more fluid with how you approach things in order to create a new normal and a new structure. It's not necessarily about moving away from structure altogether, but more so, especially if you set any intentions around the eclipse, around the zodiac new year about a month ago at the beginning, or around at the end of March, or anything like that, and maybe you're on this journey of kind of restructuring things a bit, that's what's being emphasized for you. And if there could be anything that you could focus on in terms of releasing or letting go of, it could be around exploring what are your motivations and your motives around maintaining this structure and predictability that keeps you safe. Like, what are your motivators? And also, what are the pros and cons? There's so many ways that structure and consistency serve us. It's not all bad, right? But really reflecting on that around this time can be very potent for you, my Gemini, Sun, Moon, and Rising friends. That is it for my reading for you, and I will see you in the next one. Peace. Hello, greetings to my Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Rising friends. This Scorpio full moon will be transiting your 5th house of creativity, children, your inner child, and self-expression, and also being seen. It's also activating your creativity axis, which involves not only your 5th house, but also your 11th house of, friendship, community, collaboration, and the manifestations of your creativity when you work in collaboration with others, and also manifesting other people's ideas as well. And so considering that the Scorpio full moon is all about illuminating potential hidden shadows of ourselves and calling for us to dive deeper and get more intimate within certain aspects of our lives, and considering that it's in the 5th house, my Cancer friends, you are likely around the time of this full moon, 5 days leading up to following it, and 5 days following it, you might experience some things that kind of highlight some unconscious aspects of yourselves. And what comes to mind is realizing, oh, I've been hiding certain aspects of myself to be liked by the collective. Or I have been kind of like pushing certain things down, like shadow aspects of myself, to be embraced and to assimilate and to feel safe in certain environments where I feel like I might be being judged. That's what's coming up for me, especially because the 5th house, again, it's all about aspects of yourself that want to be seen. Because we are community-based organisms, it's all about reciprocity. It's about holding space for others and others holding space for ourselves. And I feel like a lot of times with 5th house characteristics, 5th house is the house of Leo, there's always this sort of association with the unevolved aspects of Leo, which is like wanting attention. And so when I say like wanting to be seen, it's like wanting attention, maybe being vapid, wanting to suck the energy out of the room and have it be for yourself. But the evolved aspect of Leo and really the 5th house is about how as human organisms, it is completely natural and healthy to want to feel safe, seen, supported, and accepted in the environments that we are in. And really not always push down aspects of ourselves that are silly, that are creative, that want to be expressed in one way or another. And so with that said, this Scorpio full moon is highlighting themes like that within your life, my Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Rising friends. And you're being called to strike a balance right now within this axis of the 5th and 11th house, because we see the moon is transiting your 5th, the sun is transiting your 11th. And again, 11th house is about Aquarius and all things community, collaboration, reciprocity, equitability, and thinking outside of the box. Like think of like a really innovative group. Think of like maybe a musical collective that's really innovative with their sound because they're all feeding off of one another. Think about communities where you go and they're working on something with a purpose. So think of humanitarian efforts, creative ways to support your community or your global community. And right now, you're being asked to strike a balance between holding space for what you creatively and who you naturally are, and also balancing the expression of the community around you. So for example, like maybe you are in a community space where maybe there's an imbalance where there's too much emphasis on you and too much emphasis and maybe even an over-reliance on you to the point where you need to kind of stifle down your more creative things because you're serving in that way. And there's another perspective of it where it's like you're looking to be seen and heard. And I think that that's likely going to be it, where you're noticing this within yourself. And because this is a full moon, if you're looking to do any sort of releasing full moon rituals where you're letting go of what no longer serves you, exploring if there's anything that is hindered present or in the past. Sometimes these subconscious conditioning sort of things that happens from when we're young, where it takes only one person, sometimes even a parent, somebody influential in our lives, to make fun of us or say, what are you doing? That's silly. And then you're like, I am never going to hold space for that aspect of myself ever again, because that equates to me being made fun of, or me feeling silly, or me looking stupid. And diving into, especially because if you've set any intentions during the Aries eclipse or the zodiac new year or the beginning of the New Year's resolutions, and you're on this path and you're like, and you're reflecting on those things, you can really look at what is hindering that and in what aspects am I playing small because I want to assimilate. And then also exploring what communities light me on fire, make me feel seen, heard, and accepted, and leaning into that as well. So yeah, that is my reading for my Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Rising friends. Be sure to comment 3 I don't know, 3 Cancer signs, the sign of Cancer, in the comment section below, or let me know what you thought of this reading if it resonates with you. But with that said, I will see you in the next one. Peace. Hello, greetings to my Leo, Sun, Moon, and Rising friends. So this Scorpio full moon will be transiting your 4th house of your inner circle, your home, and your family life. And this eclipse, with that context, because it's illuminating a lot of hidden aspects of ourselves, calling us to dive deeper and get more intimate and acknowledge some unconscious aspects of ourselves or others, to dive deeper or potentially take a step back. This is a full moon, so there is an aspect of letting go of what no longer serves us, with the context of new information that might be coming to light, because the full moon is revealing it and bringing that up from all of our inner worlds. Around this time, you might notice some potential revelations, new information that's coming up within your inner circle, your really close friends, your family members, especially within the home as well. There might be something new that kind of changes things within your home or your more immediate space. That can also be like, say you're a part of a community that you go to like every week or every month or something like that. You might notice that there's some changes there, some new information that comes to light, where there's an opportunity to dive deeper with your inner circle and your family, your chosen family, and kind of acknowledge those things and process it. Or it could be things that are revealed that make you realize, oh, I need to take a step back and create some strong boundaries, because this is not aligned with who I am. But overall, that's what's going to be coming up in general. And then we also see that this full moon is activating your security axis. So that involving your 4th and your 10th house of your career, your public image, and your reputation. What I mean by that is your security axis is in the 4th house. That involves your sense of security when it comes to your emotional security, feeling affirmed, seen, protected, acknowledged. And then your 10th house, that being, the house ruled by Capricorn, being all about status, career, public image, achievements, reputation, is like, when I step out of my immediate community and go into the bigger world, the broad world, what's my status there? Where do I stand? And that's why it's so strongly tied to our career, because in modern times, like, a lot of our ambition is targeted towards that. And a lot of our ambition is tied to how we feel when it comes to our standing in society, how valued we are in our outer world, that being the 10th house, and our more intimate world, that being the 4th house, like our family, our home lives, and our inner circles. And so in general, this full moon will be illuminating a lot of themes when it comes to your standing in the more immediate and broader communities that you are a part of. And there's going to be themes of illuminating hidden aspects of your psyche, but I think that it'll likely be potential hidden aspects of like your family and your inner circle, where you're kind of realizing where you stand, maybe realizing certain people's opinions of you, or maybe you're finally speaking your truth with your family or people around you of what you think of them. But there's going to be new information coming up where people and yourself might be feeling it's a lot easier to articulate where you're at, and there might be a potential restructuring a bit with career, but more so with family. And so if you want to do any sort of full moon rituals or things that are involving kind of releasing and letting go of things around this time, it'll definitely be very helpful and most energetically supported if you're focusing on and reflecting on what is and isn't serving you within your most immediate circles. And maybe sometimes it's you, maybe sometimes, because what I'm getting is like, there's a potential invitation to get more intimate and to dive deeper into something and to open up a bit more, to kind of resolve something within an inner circle type space. And you have an option of doing that, or maybe not. Or maybe it's like, okay, I have that opportunity, but I still don't feel safe and I need to set a boundary. But there's going to be potential themes within that for you. And so letting go of, reflecting on what you want to work on or let go of, or looking at what isn't working for you, just reflecting on, your more immediate circle and the dynamics that you have there, your home life, and what is and isn't working for you, even in your home and even your relationship with yourself as well, in that way. But that's my reading for you, my Leo, Sun, Moon, and Rising friends. If you made it to the end of this, I would love if you commented 3 house emojis, or if you want to comment if this reading resonated with you, what you think. And with that said, I will see you in the next one. Peace. Hello to my Virgo sun, moon, and rising friends. So this Scorpio full moon will be transiting your third house of communication, learning, information exchange, all things that of the air. So think sort of short-term travel and siblings as well. And it's also activating your communication, or I like to call it your learning access. So that involves your third and your ninth house, because the sun will be in your ninth house, which is all about expanding your awareness and your ideas of things. And so during this time, because the Scorpio full moon is all about highlighting and putting a spotlight and sort of illuminating, revealing hidden shadow aspects of ourselves and others, maybe things that we wanted to brush under the rug, or maybe things that we weren't even conscious of. We didn't even realize until we have a certain experience. And because it's involving your communication, and considering that Mercury is retrograde right now, I think that you might likely experience something 5 days leading up to 5 days following this full moon that highlights for you that there's a hiccup, or there's a hitch or an issue when it comes to miscommunication and what that shows up as for you. And I think that also this time is really highlighting the power of learning, and maybe potentially something that's holding you back from communicating and learning with people. And what's coming up for me is like potential biases. You're either coming up to a roadblock where you're realizing, oh, I was kind of biased. I kind of assumed I knew everything, but I'm getting educated on it. The full moon is illuminating these hidden unconscious aspects that have to do with expanding my awareness. So it could be like an unknown bias. And this could also show up for others, where it's like you're trying to communicate and it's just not getting through to them. And it's almost like you might experience a situation where you feel like you're being judged, or it's just somebody is just kind of set in how they want to experience it and they're not open to that. But ultimately, this full moon is really highlighting for you how potent and powerful it is to expand your awareness and learn. So around this time, you might also have some experiences where you're realizing the power and the benefit of letting go of certain ignorance type things. You also might notice that in you or yourself or someone else. Have you ever experienced somebody who kind of likes to pretend that they're like ignorant to things? Like they get to kind of like tap into the benefit of claiming ignorance. Like that way they can be like, I didn't know that. And that way they can kind of get away with certain things. I think that also might be showing up around this time. And the full moon in Scorpio is all about highlighting hidden type things where we're kind of turning a blind eye consciously, like we don't want to deal with it. And it's coming up and you're like, ooh, I just picked up on that. I intuitively just picked up on that. Or within others, or even within yourself, where you might be called out in some way, or you might call out yourself where you pick up on these things. And so in terms of letting go of anything, if you want to do a full moon ritual where you're kind of releasing things that no longer serve you, I think that a big aspect of that can be looking at anything that might be holding you back from expanding your awareness, from communicating with people, learning from people, exchanging information, and really just educating yourself. You also might notice some experiences where you're kind of being nudged to lean into your education in some way, but it's really going to be about socializing. I think it's going to be a lot more about the more immediate aspects of how you socialize, who you're socializing with, and things like that. The other aspect of this is that I feel like you might notice some insights, downloads, things that they might be things that kind of like, it's like this light that's kind of showing you this path where you could take to learn more in some way or dive deeper into something that you're really curious about. But because Mercury is retrograde, I think that you'll likely see the ramifications and the ripple effect playing out over the course of the next few weeks as Mercury leaves its retrograde period. Because when in retrograde, it can create a lot of stagnation within these third house aspects of our lives. But as Mercury goes direct, it can feel like there's almost like this tidal wave of like, oh, I feel like I can finally articulate what I've been feeling and experiencing very potently. So be mindful of that. And because Mercury will be going direct pretty close to this eclipse, you might start already feeling it. But my point is, be patient, because there likely can be experiences that you have now that over the course of the next few weeks, and especially like through mid-May, because that's when the post-shadow period ends for Mercury, around like May 13th. That's when you will likely feel a lot of clarity that's tied to this full moon. But with that said, I, again, yeah, leave 3 light bulb emojis if you made it through this reading, if it resonated with you the most, especially if you're listening to other ones and you're like, which emojis do I choose? You know, choose whichever reading resonates with you most. And I will see you in the next one. Peace. Hello to my Libra, Sun, Moon, and Rising friends. So this Scorpio full moon will be transiting your 2nd house of personal finances, possessions, self-worth, and material things. Also sensory pleasures as well. And we will also see that in general, this full moon will also be activating your financial access. So that involving your 2nd and your 8th house of long-term investments. And that can be financial investments, but also energetic investments, think like long-term relationships. And so considering that this full moon in Scorpio is really this cosmic spotlight that's specifically illuminating more so our shadow sides, like our really deeper rooted aspects of our psyche, bringing that to the surface in a lot of ways, to the forefront of our awareness. And considering that it's in the 2nd house involving finances, I think that a lot of that you will likely be noticing a lot of themes and experiences where aspects of your finances are being brought to your attention that you were not aware of, that you either literally had no idea that you needed to know about, maybe because you were never educated on it, or aspects that you were kind of avoiding. You know, finances can be a very stressful thing for many of us. And I think that it's no coincidence, you know, around this time is tax season. So I don't think it takes, you know, a psychic to assume that this can likely illuminate that aspect, especially with your personal finances, your more immediate possessions as well. There's going to be, I think, a lot of illuminating information coming forward where you're kind of realizing like, oh, I did not know that, but now I do. And it's a good opportunity, considering that this is a full moon, for you to let go of anything that's limiting you within these 2nd house realms of your finances, of your possessions, and also of your self-worth. And considering that this is your financial access that involves the 8th house, another aspect of the 8th house does involve like long-term relationships. And I think that you might notice that some things become very highlighted around this time of potential people as well that might be holding things back, like maybe like an advisor or someone in your life who's been giving you recommendations, where it's one side of the coin, it could be, I should have listened to them. And the other side of the coin could be, ooh, this is what I need to let go of in order to grow. And this is a perfect opportunity to do it during a full moon ritual of releasing. So that's really what is going to be illuminated for you. I think that you're also being asked to strike a balance between more immediate impulse buys and things that are like a little treat, like, ooh, and you might be noticing like, those are so great, that's valid, like it's good to reward ourselves in many ways. But if it's at the detriment of our finances, like in our financial health and things like that, like, you know, it's like, because 2nd house is also a little bit more immediate compared to the 8th house, and we're being asked to strike a balance between that. So I think that, yeah, there's going to be a spotlight on your spending and getting that in order. And it's going to be aspects specifically of your spending or of your finances and your material possessions and things and how you obtain those things. And also your self-worth and your ties to material things, but also just on a personal level, just your self-worth, where you might learn through experiences hidden aspects of your relationship with yourself. And, you know, am I being too hard on myself? Am I focusing too much on the more immediate gratification of things? And do I need to slow down a bit to actually learn and actually process and implement and create structure? That's another aspect of the 2nd house, is creating structure and routine in our lives and bringing stability to our lives. And with the Scorpio full moon highlighting hidden aspects and also asking us to dive deeper and get intimate with these aspects of ourselves. Again, I said in the beginning of the video, intimacy does not always equate to more of a romantic or like sexual type thing. Intimacy also involves like opening up and facing more vulnerable aspects of ourselves and co-creating a safe space where we can be vulnerable with people. And that's how we fortify and deepen our relationships, because we're building trust of like, oh my gosh, I opened up about this really delicate thing and I'm trusting you with this information and you're trusting me with your information, and we're building that trust. And so around this time, there's a lot of themes around that as well, of highlighting your ability to face and get deep about your relationship with your finances, but also your relationship with yourself. Are you hard on yourself? Are you you know, being your own best advocate? Are you over relying on people outside of yourself for that validation? Those are a lot of the themes that you will likely be experiencing, my Libra, Sun, Moon, and Rising friends. But if you made it to the end of this reading, I'd love if you commented 3 Libra emojis to let me know, or comment down below if this reading resonated with you. But with that said, I will see you in the next one. Peace. Hello to my Scorpio, Sun, Moon, and Rising friends. So this Scorpio full moon will be transiting your first house, as many of you probably already know. So the first house is all about your self-image, your ego, your sense of self, your personality, and really beginnings, a lot of new beginnings. And considering that this is transiting your first house, oh, it's also activating your relationship axis. So it's not only will the moon be transiting your first house, but the sun, which will be in opposition creating this full moon, will be in your 7th house of relationships. So this full moon will be asking and calling you to strike a balance between aspects of how you speak your truth while also holding space for the truths within your relationships, how you serve yourself versus how you serve your relationships, and striking that balance of where you are putting your energy. But there's really going to be a big emphasis on yourself. And considering that this full moon is all about being this cosmic spotlight illuminating aspects of our lives that we might be ready to let go of in order to grow, but also aspects of ourselves where we have grown in some ways, and namely with it being in Scorpio, highlighting hidden shadow aspects of ourselves and calling us to dive deeper. You're being called to dive deeper into your personal relationship with yourself, into how your ego has been playing a role in your relationships, into deeper, more shadow sides of your psyche, into unconscious aspects of yourself as well. And I think that what will likely be, in the way that this will likely be playing out, is you having experiences where it becomes very clear that there are aspects of yourself that maybe you have hidden away in order to be accepted in your relationships, or things that you have kind of like pushed down because you didn't really want to process, but they're unconsciously influencing yourself, your personality, how you present yourself to the world. That's a big first house theme. And I think that there's definitely relationships will play a role as well, but you're also namely asking to get more intimate and personal and dive deeper in a maybe a more vulnerable way with yourself, and acknowledging, oh, I have been acting a certain way and being maybe passive aggressive, or I have been maybe unconsciously sabotaging or self-sabotaging, or I have been rude or having an attitude. And it's like, why are you acting that way? And maybe you're finally realizing like, oh, I was acting that way because I had an uncomfy or shadow emotion of maybe jealousy or frustration or feeling hurt. And this Scorpio full moon is really bringing that deeper rooted inner world to the surface and allowing and supporting you in acknowledging and processing these things if you're ready to do so. But it'll ultimately be up to you if you want to do that. And so in terms of a full moon sort of ritual, especially in terms of releasing or letting go of anything, if you want to focus all about you, my Scorpio friends, really focus on releasing maybe limiting beliefs, or maybe releasing anything that you might have noticed over 5 days leading up to 5 days following this full moon, that you're realizing like, oh, like this is a hidden aspect of myself. Sometimes it's even like trauma, things that happened that you kind of don't even want to think about, and you're realizing, oh, that has actually been influencing my behavior, and it would be helpful if I kind of acknowledge those things. I think that you also, another thing that could, a way that this could manifest is that in your relationships, you're being asked to dive deeper. You're being asked to get a little bit more intimate, and you might want to avoid that and draw your energy back to you. And because it's uncomfy, right? It's like you might be realizing that there's this overemphasis of the self and not enough balance into the relationship. And this full moon is illuminating that for you. So with that said, this full moon, again, is really all about self-image, your identity, your personality, and aspects of shadow aspects of those things within you, and those being illuminated, and really getting to the root of some of your behaviors in kind of getting clarity around that. And that's really, if you're open to that, when I think about the previous full moon, no, not full moon, the previous new moon and eclipse in Aries, or any intentions that you might have set at the beginning of this lunation, or maybe the beginning of Aries season for this new zodiac year, or maybe the new year in December, like resolutions, this might be a time where you're on your path of pursuing what you're looking to pursue, but you're kind of realizing like, oh, there's aspects of myself that I need to process and acknowledge and hold space for, and maybe give a bit more love and attention to, in order for me to more intimately understand my behavior and what it is that is holding me back. And if you want to do some type of full moon ritual, it can be around releasing any sort of limiting beliefs. That's a big one. I feel like that there could be limiting beliefs that are holding you back from diving deeper into a relationship or a friendship, that's making you feel an aversion to that space. And just really all about you, my Scorpio Sun, Moon, and Rising friends. But with that said, that concludes my reading for this Scorpio full moon. If you like this, I would love if you commented 3 bird emojis to let me know that you made it to the end. If you hear my cat, it's because she is being a cat. She wants me to play with her, but I will play with her in a second. Anyway, but you can either comment that or comment if this resonated with you. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Hello to my Sagittarius Sun, Moon, and Rising peeps, my friends. This eclipse, oh my gosh, this Scorpio full moon will be transiting your 12th house of the subconscious, secrets, illusions, imagination, solitude, and endings. And, you know, that is the 12th house that is ruled by Pisces. So think of the very last sign of the zodiac. So the end of the zodiac wheel, end of life type things, where you're kind of reflecting and tapping deeper into your spirituality and really diving deeper into the imagination and our psyche and that deeper reflection. And considering that this full moon will be in Scorpio and really highlighting our hidden, our shadow aspects of ourselves and calling us to potentially dive deeper and become more intimate in a lot of ways, like kind of facing these shadows and these maybe uncomfy feelings or experiences, and how that can be how that can serve a purpose to allow us to dive deeper. And considering that it's transiting this 12th house, I think that what will likely be illuminated for y'all is how escapism might be like playing a role or being a potential detriment in your life in some ways. And what I'm getting is like, especially when it comes to our imagination and escape and like utilizing it, I feel like this full moon could be illuminating the root to our escapism. So when I say escapism, what I mean is like when you kind of dive into a book or a video game or a movie or anything other than dealing with your real life. Like it could be scrolling on your phone, you know, to the point that you kind of like look up for air and you're like, oh, this is a lot. I'm not. And, you know, obviously that's not the situation for everyone, but I think that that's one way that this Scorpio full moon can illuminate hidden aspects of our more imaginative side. And because this is also activating your service access, so that being your 6th and 12th houses, this full moon will be transiting your 12th house, but the sun will be in your 6th house, that being of like routine, structure, balance, and being of service. You're being called to strike this balance between your more fluid and intuitive and malleable self and the aspects of yourself that just easily flow. It comes easily to you. It's like the more creative aspects of yourself. And you're being asked to strike a balance between that and like the more practical, real world things and duties and responsibilities that you have in life. And you're also being asked to strike a balance between your more grounded routines and structures and the more transformative sort of head in the clouds aspects of things. It's like we need to utilize our imagination to see what is possible for ourselves. And I think that another theme that might come up for you, my Sagittarius Sun, Moon, and Rising friends, is, okay, you have this idea of the direction you want to go in, and you have these clear things, especially if you gain that clarity from the April new moon and eclipse that we had. That was this potent cosmic doorway to walk into. And maybe you have a lot of clarity in your mind, and you're being called during this full moon to ask, like, are you actually taking those ideas and downloads and bringing them down into reality and bringing structure and to them through your actual aligned actions? I think that that could show up as another theme. And then also from a spiritual perspective, I think that you could experience some really, really illuminating and potent spiritual downloads around this time. I think this full moon in Scorpio is really allowing for that to happen. And these downloads are going to allow you to dive deeper into your spiritual practice, dive deeper into your relationship with your creativity and your intuitive abilities, and really like the more spiritual realms of life. And so if you're considering doing any sort of like full moon ritual, or if you kind of want to know like what would be the most energetically supported to be focusing on right now in terms of like maybe things that you want to release or let go of, it can be reflecting on ways that yourself or maybe even others have potentially slowed down, hindered, or kind of is slowing your spiritual journey in some way. And sometimes, especially because this is a service access, so this is also involving your sixth house, is there anything, especially having to do with maybe work or being of service to others, that might be draining or taking away from or making it harder for you to take that time to pour into yourself on a spiritual, imaginative, creative, and intuitive level, and a spiritual level, and exploring those things. But yeah, that concludes my reading for y'all, my Sagittarius Sun, Moon, and Rising friends. If you made it to the end of this, I would love if you commented 3 dream bubbles, or it's like the thought bubble emojis to let me know that you made it to the end, or if you'd like to comment on whether or not this resonated with you. But with that said, I will wrap up this reading for you, and I will see you in the next one. Peace. Hello, my Capricorn Sun, Moon, and Rising friends. So this Scorpio full moon will be transiting your 11th house of collaboration, friendships, community, and also your ambitions, your dreams, and your goals. And so considering that this full moon that is in Scorpio is all about shining this cosmic light on hidden aspects of ourselves and others, bringing in a lot of illuminating revelations and information that are unconscious to us, maybe whether they are things that we or others are aware of and we don't want to acknowledge, things that we kind of push down, or things that we were not even aware of, and we're like, oh my gosh, like this is like a subconscious thing that I didn't even realize is motivating my actions and is what's a part of why I feel conflicted, or I didn't realize that I was doing this way and somebody brought this to my attention. Considering that those are the themes of this full moon, I think that the way that this will likely manifest is in there being revelations or new information in your social and collaborative circles. So think like your friend circles, but also maybe like where you work, in your collaborative spaces where new information is coming to light, that with the likely theme where you are being called to either acknowledge this information and use it as like a springboard to kind of dive deeper with your collaborators, with your friends, and have an even deeper relationship with them, where you're both sharing vulnerability and co-creating a space where you can open up and process and better understand what's happening. But alternatively, this is a full moon, so this can also be about a culmination point where maybe there's something that hasn't been working and it's kind of building up to this point where you're like, actually, I feel like I'm kind of ready to release what's no longer serving me. And this information is kind of like the last straw, or it's illuminating because it's finally giving me this sort of permission to understand like, oh, that wasn't working. You might also learn about your goals or your aspirations or even shared goals within a community where things are being illuminated that are kind of calling into question what was the core reason why you even want this thing. Like, is it rooted in something shallow? Is it rooted in like a shared intention? Or is it kind of rooted in also like there could be information that comes about where it kind of highlights for you, actually, I really want this. Like, and this is really rooted in something that I care so much about, where that's also being called into question, or there's going to be an experience where you're tapping into your why, is what I mean. And I think that with friendships and collaborations, it could be a situation where you're kind of realizing, oh, we don't want the same things. And that's okay. And around the time of this full moon can be a great time in general if you're looking for like an area to focus on, of like maybe what to release or what to kind of celebrate and put energy into around this culmination point, this high energetic point in the lunar cycle. It could be, again, around like your collaborations, your friendships, and shared goals, shared ideas, and what feels most aligned for you. Another aspect of this is you might also experience situations where you're being encouraged to transmute your feelings or your experiences into something creatively. And it could also be, it's like you're in community and you're feeling a certain way and you're noticing, you're picking up on how everybody's feeling. And it's almost like you might feel a spark of inspiration to kind of process things in a different way, and to maybe utilize it as this creative force to find a solution. Actually, I feel like you might experience potential epiphanies as well, because like with Scorpio energy highlighting the hidden shadow sides, there's also can be these senses of inspiration of like, oh, I never thought of it that way, or I didn't even realize that this is such a potent influence that can be a driver for me to take action that's mutually beneficial for myself and the collective. But with that said, that concludes my reading for y'all, my Capricorn Sun, Moon, and Rising friends. If you made it to the end of this, I'd love if you commented 3 paintbrush emojis or like any sort of painting emoji, and what you thought about this reading, if it resonated with you, if you've noticed that things have been building up in alignment with these themes or anything like that. But I will end it here. I'm sending you my love, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Hello to my Aquarius, Sun, Moon, and Rising people. So this Scorpio full moon will be transiting your 10th house of your career, your reputation, and your public image. So think like kind of like where you feel like you stand in society in some ways. It'll also be it'll also be activating your security access. So that not only involves your 10th house, that being your career, your work, your relationship with your broader community within that aspect, but also your 4th house of your family, your home life. So think of like your inner and outer circle and how that creates security for you, my Aquarius friends. And because this full moon is all about illuminating and shining a light into shadow aspects of ourselves and others, aspects of ourselves and just things in life, maybe even experiences that we might have consciously wanted to kind of like brush under the rug, sweep under the rug, or unconsciously. There's this air in general of these things being illuminated around this time. And so for you, there's on one side of the coin, there's a potential that on a broader scale, certain hidden aspects of yourself might be revealed in some way. And maybe you're the one revealing them. Maybe it's you making an announcement of something where you're saying, hey, this is what's going on in my personal life. And maybe you have to say that on a professional level to let everybody know that, let everybody know that you're on the same page or something like that. It could also look like maybe not even you, maybe it's people around you within your sort of work life, your broader sort of community space where you work or where you gain a sense of like standing in society. Another aspect of this is also like being a parent, and that's your contribution to society as well, is like you're literally co-creating the next generation of people that will be the stewards of this literal planet and society. But there might be some information or unconscious things that you didn't realize coming to light within those spaces where it could show up as layoffs. It could show up as new jobs. It could show up as, oh, that's why that person wasn't here. It's because they're moving, or that's why this thing wasn't happening. It's because there was this restructuring within the job. But ultimately there's this clarity and understanding because there's a lot of our inner world and other people's inner world coming to the surface, and a lot of more intimate information and knowledge coming to the surface. But ultimately, a lot of the themes, especially with Scorpio, is that we're being called to get more intimate, get more personal, and in the process be a bit more vulnerable, because a lot of these things that we're either consciously not wanting to acknowledge or process, or unconsciously or consciously we're like, I don't want to deal with it. It's when we are able to acknowledge these things that we're able to look at our lives, especially within our career path maybe, or our standing in society and our relationship with it, and understand it better. Another example of this is you might experience revelations where you're like, I don't need these people's approval. I don't like you realize like, oh, I was doing that. And it was because of, and I have this motivation to get promoted because of this, but maybe I don't want that. Or maybe it's like, you know what? I always thought I don't really want to be ambitious because of this, that, and the other thing. And I realized the only reason why I said that was because I was afraid of being disappointed. I was afraid of being hurt. I was afraid of being seen. I was, namely being seen trying. So those are the type of things that can likely come up for y'all, my Aquarius, Sun, Moon, and Rising friends around this time. And if you're looking for anything to maybe focus on for, say, like a full moon ritual where you're looking to kind of release things, anything that's no longer serving you, or even celebrate how far you've come, really focusing on, again, like aspects of your work, aspects of your perception of your standing in society. I feel like a big thing is also going to be like, what do you think of yourself outside of a lot of that stuff? And like the really reflecting on also your job. And like, you could even think of like, what am I letting go of around like job stuff and job stress? Maybe it's like, I'm letting go of the need of approval of others in certain spaces. I don't even respect them. It could be that, but it could also be like, I'm letting go of the stress of thinking that I can control everything within this space and I'm just going to do me. Like it's really, but a lot of it has to pertain to like your broader, how the broader world perceives you, your perceived, contribution to the world, and your career path, things like that. Anything that you feel like might be holding you back within those spaces, and also celebrating how far you've come within those spaces. But that concludes my reading for my Aquarius, Sun, Moon, and Rising friends. And if you made it to the end, I would love if you commented 3 tree emojis, and or just let me know if this reading resonates with you, if you've been noticing any sort of buildup happening, or if you notice that you've set any intentions or been reflecting on these areas, especially since the beginning of this lunar cycle at the Aries eclipse and new moon, or maybe even the beginning of the zodiac new year at the beginning of Aries season, you know, the end of March, or even the, you know, like the end of 2023 if you had any resolutions. But anyway, that concludes my reading, and I will see you in the next one. Peace. Hello, my Pisces, Sun, Moon, and Rising friends. So this Scorpio full moon will be transiting your 9th house of travel, education, higher learning, and think of like philosophy. So all of these mediums for expanding your awareness. And this full moon will also be activating your knowledge access, or like your information access, because the moon will be in your 9th house, but the sun will be in opposition in your 3rd house, that being of communication and also learning and information exchange, all things that of the air. And so with that consideration, and considering the themes of this full moon being about illuminating hidden aspects of our psyche, of ourselves, of others, things that maybe we've been wanting to push down consciously, we don't want to acknowledge or process, or maybe unconsciously realizing, oh my gosh, I had this unconscious behavior or bias or unconscious thing that now I'm realizing has been playing a part in my behavior, or I'm realizing that these unconscious things are playing a part in other people's behavior. Considering that this is transiting your 9th house, I think that there's going to be a lot of themes around education and information that you previously thought you knew all about. Like things that like you really thought, oh, I know all about this and this is great. And you're going to learn something that opens a whole new world of like, oh, actually I can dive even deeper into this, that, and this other thing. And it's all around expansion, expanding your awareness, expanding your education. You also might have an opportunity to do something like maybe travel, or even like higher learning in some way, whether it's like an actual college or like something like that, but it can also be a course, or you're learning something online, and there's an opportunity. It's almost like when you find a playlist and you're like, oh my gosh, I can do a deep dive now because I have this playlist talking about it, or something like that. You go down a rabbit hole. And I feel like you're being called to strike a balance with expanding your understanding of things, even when it's uncomfy, even when, like, a good example is actually sometimes politics. Like, for example, within the political spectrum, you know, ignoring like the more extreme sides of things, there's truth on both sides. There's truth on both sides. Like, as much as we disagree with certain aspects of certain politics. And I feel like I'm bringing that up because that's an example of how maybe you're on one side of the spectrum of politics and you're learning like, ooh, do the people on the other side have a point? Like, but I don't agree with them, and I don't associate with that, and blah, 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 blah. And so it's uncomfortable expanding your awareness and kind of letting your bias go to the side and having to kind of acknowledge these shadows, these things that you don't like and that maybe you're trying to not acknowledge, but looking into it deeper and realizing, oh, this is actually helping me to empathize or helping me to understand this in a different way. I think that could potentially show up. And basically, I feel like the Scorpio full moon is asking you to be open to the idea of being wrong. And that when we can acknowledge that we're wrong is that is like one of the most potent doorways to actually learning even more information. I think that also during this full moon, because we're being asked to strike this balance between the 9th house of this more broader mind expanding information and maybe the more immediate, think of like socializing with more of your inner circle in the 3rd house. There's this theme of leaving your comfort zone when it comes to learning and expanding. Because the other thing too is that it's not just about education. It can also pertain to travel and being in new spaces that are different, that are uncomfy and outside of your comfort zone. And because this full moon is also highlighting our shadow side and things that might be limiting us, or things that might have served us years ago, but we're still holding on to it. And it's kind of co-creating like these unconscious behaviors that we're finally realizing, like the full moon might be illuminating through experiences like, oh, I'm kind of closed off, or I'm kind of fearful. During this time, it might be illuminating why you might have been a little bit more nervous about going to a new group meetup, or being in a new setting with new people where you're learning something slightly different than the way that you were like, this is what it is. I feel like my Pisces sun, moon, and rising friends, be prepared to be shown that you might be wrong, and it being a good thing because it offers you this potent like path to diving deeper within yourself and getting more intimate with yourself and acknowledging and being vulnerable with maybe things that aren't working for you and potential limitations that might have been stopping you from just, broadening your awareness in a lot of ways. So in terms of like a full moon ritual or anything that you might want to do pertaining to acknowledging and maybe letting go of things that no longer serve you, I think that questioning potential biases, unconscious biases, and also where have you maybe been like latching onto your comfort zone in a way that might be limiting your ability to learn more and have a better understanding of something. And also maybe fear, I think fears around travel and like literally going to new places where it's like, oh, I don't know anybody there. But it's like, if you could just get past that one very human and normal and what we all experience of being uncomfy, you could broaden your entire world to a whole new perspective and a whole new community in a lot of ways. So consider that. But with that said, that concludes my reading for my Pisces sun, moon, and rising friends. If you made it all the way to the end of this reading, I'd love if you commented 3 plane emojis, airplane emojis, or just commenting if this resonated with you in any way, especially if you've been watching like your sun, moon, and rising, or one for your sun versus one for your rising readings to let me know which one maybe resonated with you a bit more, especially when it comes to like if you've noticed any of these themes kind of building up, because the full moon is all about this build up and this peak to the point where it's like, oh, I got to acknowledge it now. Like it's this cosmic, very bright, the brightest potential cosmic spotlight that we have, really showcasing these things. But with that said, I will see y'all in the next one, and I'm sending you my love.